Hey guys, Malthus here once again. After playing Monk for a few more days, I do want to give you a full recap, endgame update, and an actual overall definitive full guide on my Monk situation so you can try and become the same level of Monk that I became. So I'll try and include some leveling shit and everything I've learned up till now so that hopefully we don't miss out on anything. Basically have been doing the mapping for a couple days, and as you can see, things do get pretty intense, pretty dense, pretty pack-sizey, and the game, I mean, it starts to feel rather like PoE1 when it comes to, like, I guess, just overall killability of lots and lots of mobs. So by this point I have also ascended a third time, and to do that specifically I had to do a 3-floor sanctum instead of the ultimatum. I did the 7-round ultimatum and that didn't work. I think it's bugged, so to ascend that third time I think we do need to do this sanctum with 3 floors. We can talk more about that in a sec, yeah, with that I just ended up trying Unbound Avatar. Didn't really need it because my damage is so good that I don't think I need the burst, so I spec'd out of it, and I just have some generic damage nodes, and I'll show those in a sec as well. Want to also quickly show this off. This is one of the shrines that you can get. So for my Atlas in mapping, I did pick up shrines just to have a few more shrines. This one seems kind of rare, but it's basically the Gloom Shrine from PoE1, and it feels so freaking good. So overall the game is visually stunning. It's very fun to play through. I really like the base a lot, but I do think the end game needs quite a lot of work to become something you want to do over and over again. This map here is a good example of how you can actually get kind of overwhelmed in the end game, which is very rare. So you can see I end up like getting just chased by a lot of things, and I wasn't expecting it because after mapping for hours, basically, this is the first one that really just started to kind of swarm me. And yeah, you do a bit of gameplay and then you can start shattering and destroying everything, so that's all good. But the main issue with Endgame is that most of the maps at the moment are really big, the layouts are kind of bad, the mobs are kind of spread out, and some of the mechanics that they've actually included, like ambush, let's just say, and ritual, don't feel like they work very well for the current mapping system. Like rituals can be placed fucking anywhere and just be really scuffed. They have some super dangerous modifiers that just seem dumb and very unfriendly. Ambush can also be kind of placed anywhere, and the mobs can just like kind of run away, and then you don't even know what the fuck's spawning, and they might take like a minute or two to kill. But in general, I think just the maps need a bit more love on the layout, or we need a bit more movement speed to move around through these maps a bit faster. Because I personally don't really mind going through the mapping system at the moment. It's fun because my character's fun, so I just want to run in and kill stuff, and that's completely fine. But it definitely needs some tweaking to, you know, really have you wanting to do more and more of them, because they can be pretty long, they can be kind of tedious, the layouts can be super bad, and yeah. And then lastly, I wanted to show this boss fight off. This is the end of the Sanctum, or Sekma trial thing. I think this is what would have given me my last ascendancy point, and I was very strong by this point. I face rolled basically the rest of the Sanctum up to this point, and I think this boss looks like he's just got a lot of life and is kind of a bit highly tuned. First time I'd ever seen it, ended up dying because I didn't know what the fuck's going on. But yeah, I'm not at all a fan, just to talk about that, not at all a fan of having to do these trials for your ascendancies. Like, I think I can get it done and eventually do it, and that's just fine, but it's forcing a lot of people who really don't like this type of stuff to face tank this type of stuff, and I just don't think that's a good idea. And I didn't particularly like it either. It's just a bit much. It's not really ARPG. So I do want to make a full monk guide for my character, where it's at now and like how to, you know, get to the same point and stuff, but just to talk a bit more about that other stuff. The Ascendancy Trial stuff, I agree with pretty much everyone that it's a bit much, it's a bit forced, like having to do either the Ultimatum or the Trial Sekma to ascend. They're both, at the moment, pretty toxic and kind of cancer. The Ultimatum one, just because you can get overwhelmed, some of the modifiers are really bad and painful. And the bosses, like I just got one tapped by a bird randomly, like without really even doing anything, seem a bit overtuned. So yeah, that needs a lot of work. And then the Trial of Sekma, I just don't think that's a good idea. It just does not feel like I'm playing an ARPG. I'm just sweating my way through some kind of dumb fucking maze, which is very rewarding, don't get me wrong. It gives you lots of loot, and then you get your ascendancy, but it does not seem appropriate for what we're supposed to be doing in this game, especially compared to everything else you're doing. Everything else you're doing is like building a character, blasting, having fun, killing lots of mobs, and then it's like, alright, so for your final thing, for the thing you really need and want, your ascendancy, do this mechanic that you fucking hate. So, yeah, enough about that, though. As far as our character is concerned, let me just turn things down a bit so that we're not too in the way. We are now level 81. I've gone through a lot of tests and phases and iterations, so it does take a bit to get to the same point that I'm at. You can't just like start playing a monk and be building towards my exact build and be like, yep, this is my build. I'm going to be doing the exact same thing Mathil is. You kind of have to go through a few processes and stages. And for that, I will just quickly start talking about our leveling. So we grab, I think this is the only way to open these, so I'll just grab these to have a quick look at them. Not sure if you can open this menu otherwise, but basically we have our skill gem. I started out with Falling Thunder and Killing Palm, so your monk is going to be a bit slow to begin with, by all means. You're killing palming. I'm using Glacial Cascade a lot for like range. I'm killing palming to try and get some charges up sometimes, and then I'm Falling Thundering whenever I have charges, because it's really good in the early game. Glacial Cascade plus Frost Bomb, those two were basically my bread and butter while I was leveling. Once I got to Tempest Bell and figured out the Tempest Bell is really good, you start trying to combine that with Tempest Flurry once you get there as well, so that you Tempest Flurry, activate the bell because you have to have enough attacks for melee attacks to activate the bell, and then that becomes your absolute like god tier AoE, and then your god tier sort of single target. You can attack the bell with Glacial Cascade as well. That's very insane too if you want, but that's basically how I was leveling. Falling Thunder with Killing Palm, that's what was giving me my power charges most of the time. Once you get to Siphoning Strike, you can start doing that a bit too, but it felt clumsy to me. And then Glacial Cascade for mostly damage. Tempest Flurry for some, you know, extra fucking melee feel. And then it synergizes really well with Bell. After that, I started using Stormwave instead of Cascade because it became just a bit more fluid without having to specifically hit with the back part of the Cascade. Because bear in mind, when you're using Cascade, it's the very back part of it that does the most damage. And it's like a bit positionally weird for some bosses and stuff. Once you instead get to Stormwave, you can start doing whatever you want, and a big question is how does our Stormwave and how do we, like, you know, do other types of elements with our lightning skill. It's the same as it always was with PoE1. You get some extra other types of damage, and then you can start doing those types of damage. So my first ascendancy point was the cold one. I am the Blizzard. They gave us cold damage. My lightning skill then had cold damage. I was also using Herald of Ice and Herald of Thunder. And make sure you are using those when you start getting to the right spot. So Spirit. Pick Herald of Thunder first, I think, then Herald of Ice. It feels just a bit better. I did it the other way around, and it's fine, but it should feel a bit better. Once you start getting both of those, you'll then have pretty good clear and a good sort of grasp of a monk playstyle. I also use Lingering Illusion to help me keep up power charges, though bear in mind that's only going to work when mobs kill that illusion, which doesn't work so well during the early game because they don't kill it that quickly. But that's how I was also sustaining power charges. It's only once you reliably start freezing everything with Resonance and the other spirit buff that we have, Combat Frenzy. It's only once you start reliably freezing lots of things that you'll have your power charges become autopilot like mine. Now, like I said, bear in mind, that's more of an end game thing or a mid game sort of thing. It was up to like level 30 or 40 that I was using my own power charge generation with those other methods. And it was just a bit slower, and yes, it's a bit more methodical, tedious, that sort of thing. Once you have this up, then it's a bit more autopilot, but up until that point, you don't really need the lightsaber attack, charge stuff. That's why we have the lightsaber looking thing. It's just something you press every now and again. Once you get an autopilot, you press it all the time, feels amazing. So that's currently what's happening there. with our cold damage. So to get the cold and the freeze, I have that cold damage, I spec'd a bunch of this sort of stuff, and in the end, once I'm critting hard enough, once I'm hitting hard enough, that's just what's making me freeze. I don't know how better to explain it. I don't know exactly when I started reliably freezing things, but it's pretty much whenever I crit things and I crit them hard, because I have so much damage from my cold damage, and then the cold hits that hard. So this is kind of my damage panel there. This is my crit and crit damage. And at about 25 crit plus is when it started to feel kind of reliable. We got a lot of bonus as well, and then we're just freezing things all the time, and then we're getting power charges all the time. And then I'm pressing my charge staff, pretty much all the time. That's what makes the gameplay pretty good. I was using Shattering Palm for some AoE stuff. I pretty much don't do that anymore. And I've got Ice Strike on my left click right now because it's a kind of a gap closer. So whenever I really want to, just bridge a small gap to certain enemies, I will Ice Strike. But you don't necessarily have to do that. This is just kind of what my setup is like. So to go over my setup right now at the moment real quick, I don't think I have very efficient supports either. So you can always tinker with that. We have Charge Staff into Perpetual Charge, just so sometimes you have better charges, whatever. Innovate for the damage that it'll generate. You can also see the secondary portion of Charge Staff's damage, which is the main portion that we care about, Shockwave there, and then also Super Critical. After that we have Storm Wave. That's the thing that I'm using whenever I want to be ranged and also starting my attacks out with. And that has Magnified for area, Ice Bite for extra damage, Long Shot for long range damage, Shattering Palm, though like I said, recently I haven't been using it that much. We have Rising Tempest, Momentum, and Deep Freeze. Ice Strike, which like I said, more of a gap closer, doesn't really do too much otherwise, but you can just do this entirely if you want, if you really like the feel of it. Close Combat, Rage, and Glaciation. Tempest Flurry starts to feel pretty good once you put the attack speed on it, because then you attack a lot faster and move a bit more fluid. Primal Armament and Conduction for shock charts, though I might get rid of that. I don't know if that's really worth it. My Herald of Thunder has Coursing Current and Maim. My Tempest Bell has Expanse, Heavy Swing, and Immolate, which, like, we get some Ignite and we proc some Ignites once we have fire damage, and then whenever I have the bell down and actually attack stuff around it, it seems that we do ignite shit and do get some potency out of that. But you need fire damage somewhere. Right now it's only on my ring. If I end up losing this fire damage, then yeah, maybe I don't do this ignite stuff anymore, and maybe I don't care about this node, but that's only if you really get that fire. Otherwise, we have Herald of Ice with Cold Infusion and Blind, and then Combat Frenzy with Profusion and Clarity. And that's also a good time to mention where we get Spirit. So you do get 100 Spirit in the game, and that comes from Act 1, Act 3, and Act 6, which is Act 3 Cruel. So Act 3 and Act 3 Cruel comes from Azank Bog, and Act 1 comes from, I think it was the Ritual event. So there's all of that, and also a good time to remind you that you should be checking your entire campaign if you've got everything you need, so 2 weapons, set passive skill points, that sort of thing, because in the end you should have 24 of these extras all together. And to also talk about what these are real quick, weapon set passives, these are only really useful if you're actually going to be using your alternate weapon. So currently I've just got a shield there, doesn't really do anything, it's whatever. You can use it if you want. The idea is that this stuff is only useful if you're going to be using both. If you're not going to be using both, then don't worry about this. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't matter. But if you start using both, then instead of just investing passives across the tree, I could hopefully give an example for exactly what this does. Let's just kill that off, right? Which costs, for me right now, I think it's 6,000 to unspec 1 point for what it's worth. Instead of just investing passives everywhere, you hit this, and then you will invest a passive, like let's say up here, and then apply. And then you can also do that for your weapon at 24 somewhere else. That's how this works. So you can, let's say I have 24 spare passives right now because I unspec a lot of them. I invest 24 of them into weapon set 1 somewhere, and then I can use weapon set 2 for 24 somewhere else. And when you swap between them, they're going to swap between them. If you're not caring about that, if you're not doing that, don't worry about it. You don't have to do any of this. It's all completely fine. And I probably shouldn't have done that. So we refund that guy again, and then take our point back. So that's all that is. It's not like free points. It's just being able to utilize 2 different specs. So as far as the rest of the character, I do pick up I did recently pick up a physical staff, and so I'm a bit more fizz into LE conversion at the moment. I think ideally a big elemental staff is the play, but whatever we can is what we're using. We have a good fizz staff, and that's completely fine. Attack speed's really good, you want some of that. I put in a 30 LE and a 20 fizz thing here. Otherwise, resist life, try and cap your life out. And yeah, do whatever you can. For my ascendancies at the moment, so that's my gear, right? Nothing too special, nothing too crazy. For my ascendancies, my first 2 points went there, my second 2 points went there. I then tried Unbound Avatar, and it's really good if you want a button to press for more burst damage. I don't currently need that, so I took it out and I just took some more extra lightning damage. Once I'm actually ready gear-wise, I will spec up here, and I will try and be a bit thicker. I did try this out as well, and it's pretty much bad unless you're like really revolved around it somehow with like more generic spell scaling as well, but it's pretty much bad, so I didn't try it. And like I said, I got my ascendancy by completing the Sakama trial. This one, I think, the 3-node trial, so it needs to have 3, because I think the 7 ultimatum one does not work. So then to also talk about my actual gear at the moment and what I've got ready to go, I have this that I'm about to put on, a really big evasion ES chest, and some boots or whatever. Basically, the best way to get items at the moment, I think, is going to be Expedition. Expedition by itself is all how ROG was, but they each do their own different item. So you can re-roll some of your stuff, you can pick up a staff, and then maybe craft a good item there. Make sure you are doing plenty of currency usage, alcheming stuff, alting, regaling, exalting, and then also gambling. So I was using my gold to gamble for a chest, and that's where I ended up getting like this chest, I think. Yeah, this one was kind of from a gamble. I've been using my currency as much as I can, and that's kind of where we get our gear from. And then lastly, I'll talk about mana as well, because that seems to be an issue for some people. Yeah, I kind of run out of mana too, as you can see, but I do have good mana regen, so if I stop attacking for a bit, it works out. But otherwise, I've also been relying on the mana flask, and I did spec a little bit into mana regen over here. If I needed more, because my gem levels went higher, I would probably spec a little bit more mana regen. For now, this is all I've got. And the other thing is, if you have melee skill levels like this, +1 all, if you have like 5 or 6 on your staff, you'll probably double the mana cost of your skills. So bear in mind that you might be suffering on mana largely thanks to something like that. And you do have to kind of sort mana out in this game. For the most part, I was just mashing my mana flask a lot when I was having problems. And then, yeah, we just mention our passive tree, because, that's something you follow. So I kind of kicked this node because I thought it wasn't that efficient anymore when I started going over to the staff nodes. My dual sockets don't really do anything. They're kind of dog shit, but we can get better ones, and hopefully we do in the future. A lot of crit, a lot of herald generic damage, and that's kind of why we do a lot of damage. So I think I do a lot for our current sort of standing out there compared to other classes, but who knows what the fuck's going to happen in the future. My evasion is basically all I'm doing for defense at the moment, but my main defense is just not getting hit. So if you're looking to kind of face tank things as a monk, then this one's going to be tough. Maybe once we build into this, it'll be a lot better. Maybe if you build fully into energy shield instead, it's a lot better. At the moment, I can't really take too many hits unless I get a lot more life or evasion on my gear, which is something I'm going to be working towards. But hopefully that is a definitive enough guide for everyone. I will also mention I am WASD entirely on my monk, and I have been from day one, and it's felt pretty good. But yeah, hopefully that's as much information as you'll ever need to become a monk, just like me. It really only started to get online for me at around level 30 or 40, and then from then on, there's some parts where it's a bit rough, but then we have power spikes, and just make sure you're upgrading your weapon, get some flat elemental damage wherever you can early on, and it should feel pretty damn good. So with that, guys, hopefully your monking is going as well as mine is. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time.